Episode 1. The Doll in the Window. It was raining the day Claire saw the doll. Not the soft kind of rain that soothes a lonely heart, but the kind that whispers against your skin, like cold fingers testing whether you're still alive. She was rushing home from another disappointing job interview when she noticed the dim, dying glow of Hollister's toy shop. Shouldn't have been open. The for lease sign hung crooked on the door, and most of the shelves inside were empty, covered in the gray dust of forgotten childhoods. But there, in the center of the window, stood a single porcelain doll, pale, elegant, and impossibly pristine. Its eyes, deep and glassy, shimmered as though someone had just cried behind them. Claire froze. For a moment, she could have sworn the doll blinked. "Old stock," the shopkeeper muttered from the shadows when she finally went inside. His voice was brittle, his breath faintly metallic. "Came with the shop. No one wants her." He named a price so low Claire almost felt guilty. Almost. That night, the doll sat on her daughter Lily's bedside table. Lily, 6 years old and bright as a candle in a dark room, fell in love instantly. "She's pretty," the little girl whispered, brushing its hair. "She told me her name's Eleanor." Claire frowned. "Sweetheart, dolls don't talk." Lily giggled. "She does. But only if you tell her a secret first." Claire didn't think much of it. Kids had imaginations after all. But later, as she folded laundry in the next room, she heard something soft through the wall. Two voices. One was Lily's. The other was slower, breathier, whispering things she couldn't quite catch. She pushed open the bedroom door. Lily was asleep, curled under her blanket. The doll sat upright beside her pillow, facing the door, its lips slightly parted. Claire's stomach turned. She hadn't left it like that. At midnight, the house felt heavier than usual. Claire couldn't sleep. She got up for water, and that's when she heard it again. The faint porcelain rasp of something breathing. It was coming from Lily's room. When she stepped inside, the night light flickered. The doll was on the floor now, facing the window, its cracked lips forming a delicate smile. Then a whisper, faint but clear, drifted through the air. "Why did you lie to him, Claire?" Her blood froze. That voice wasn't Lily's. It wasn't anyone's. No one else was in the room. She dropped the glass she was holding. It shattered on the floor, echoing like a scream. She looked again, heart hammering, and the doll was sitting back on the nightstand, perfectly still, porcelain eyes gleaming in the dark. Claire staggered back, trembling. Couldn't have spoken. Couldn't. But when she looked down, she saw the smallest note tucked beneath the doll's hand. A yellowed scrap of paper, written in a child's handwriting. "I keep secrets safe. I promise." The rain outside turned into a storm, wind howling through the cracks of the old house. Claire locked the doll in the cupboard before dawn. When morning came, she found Lily sitting at the kitchen table, hair neatly brushed, humming softly. Claire tried to smile. "Morning, baby. Did you sleep okay?" Lily nodded. "Eleanor says thank you for letting her out." Claire's heart stopped. The cupboard door was wide open, and the doll was sitting right there on the counter smiling. Episode 2. Whispers in the Dark. The nights were never quiet after that. Even when the wind slept and the rain softened to mist, the house seemed to breathe, floorboards expanding like lungs, walls creaking with restless whispers. Claire told herself it was only her imagination. It had to be. But imagination didn't explain how the doll always ended up in a different room each morning, or why Lily had started murmuring to it long after she was supposed to be asleep. First, Claire tried to reason with her daughter. "Honey, dolls can't talk. You're just pretending." But Lily's face changed. Her eyes went distant, like something was watching through her. She told me things, Mommy, Lily said quietly. About Daddy. The world froze around that single word. Claire's throat tightened. Her husband, Mark, had been dead for almost 3 years. Car accident. At least that's what everyone believed. Only Claire knew the whole story. The fight, the storm, the way he'd driven off after her final, cruel words. No one else had heard the things she'd said that night. No, baby, she whispered, kneeling. Eleanor couldn't have said that. She doesn't know your daddy. Lily smiled faintly. She said he was scared and wet, and he was sorry. Claire's blood turned to ice. She hadn't told anyone about the rain that night, or how Mark's body was found near the river, soaked and broken. That evening, when Lily fell asleep, Claire sat by her daughter's bed with a glass of wine, staring at the doll. The porcelain face gleamed under the faint glow of the night light. Too perfect, too human. Who are you? Claire whispered. The silence pressed against her ears until she could hear her own pulse. Then, ever so faintly, the doll's head twitched. A sound like a breath escaped its lips. Claire dropped the glass. It shattered, but the sound was drowned by something else. A whisper. You told him you wished he'd die. Her heart nearly stopped. The voice was soft, female, and close, like someone leaning over her shoulder. She spun around. No one was there. The doll now sat crooked, its head tilted toward her, mouth slightly open. The whisper came again. You remember, don't you? Claire's vision blurred. The air grew thick, cold enough to make her breath visible. She reached for the doll, trembling, and shouted, Stop it! Stop! The lights flickered once, and the whisper ceased. She backed away, chest heaving. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the nightstand. Unknown number. With shaking hands, she answered. Static. Then a faint, broken sound. A man's voice. Claire, why did you leave me there? Her scream was swallowed by the storm outside. The call ended abruptly. She stood frozen for minutes, maybe hours, until dawn bled through the curtains. When she finally dared to look back, the doll was gone. She found it later in the kitchen, sitting on the counter, facing the window, a small muddy handprint smeared across its porcelain cheek. And scrawled in a child's handwriting beside it was another note. He remembers. Do you? Episode 3. The Secret You Buried. By the third night, the house no longer felt like home. The air carried a weight invisible but undeniable. The kind that made doors swell shut and shadows cling too long to the corners. Claire had stopped sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. Mark, soaked to the bone, eyes wide, reaching for her through the broken glass of memory. She told herself it was grief resurfacing, that the doll was nothing more than a cruel coincidence. But that lie began to rot the moment she found the footprints. Small ones, muddy, leading from Lily's room to the backyard. At 2 a.m., she followed them out the back door, clutching a flashlight. The night was silent except for the cicadas, and that distant hum that seemed to come from the ground itself. Her slippers sank into the soft soil as she approached the spot behind the old oak tree. That's where she saw it. The dirt had been disturbed, a shallow patch uneven as though something or someone had been recently unearthed. Her chest tightened. She remembered this place, the night of the accident, the rain, the screaming, Mark's drunken face, pale in the lightning, and the way she had thrown the last of his things. His ring, his lighter, his watch, into a shallow hole, burying them along with her guilt. Mommy! Claire spun around. Lily stood by the back door, clutching the doll in her arms. His porcelain face gleamed under the flashlight, too white, too clean. What are you doing out here? Claire gasped. Eleanor wanted to see where you hid it, Lily said softly. Claire's hand shook. Hid what? Lily's voice turned strange, like something else was speaking through her. What you didn't bury deep enough. The flashlight flickered. The wind rose suddenly, carrying the scent of wet earth and rust. Claire stumbled backward, the beam of light catching something glinting in the soil. A ring. Mark's wedding ring, still smeared with dirt. Her knees went weak. She hadn't been here in 3 years. No one could have known. Lily, go inside, she shouted. But her daughter didn't move. Her small head tilted slightly to the side, mirroring the doll's exact posture. Then, in a perfect mimic of Claire's own voice, Lily whispered, "You said he deserved it." The flashlight went out. In the darkness, Claire could hear the faint crunch of porcelain on dirt, like delicate feet stepping closer. She dropped the light and ran, pulling Lily into her arms, slamming the door behind them. For a moment, silence. Then a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the other side of the door. Claire held her breath. The knock stopped. When dawn came, she found Lily asleep on the couch, the doll clutched to her chest. Mud streaked both their clothes. Claire didn't remember falling asleep, but when she looked outside, the patch of earth behind the oak tree was smooth again, untouched. Almost, because right at the center, resting neatly on the dirt, was the ring. And next to it, a note in a child's handwriting. Secrets don't stay buried forever. Episode 4, Confession Hour. By Sunday morning, the whispers had grown bold. They no longer hid in the corners of the house. They followed Claire. Through the clatter of dishes, through the hum of the refrigerator, even through the shallow rhythm of her breath. Sometimes, when she glanced at her reflection in the kitchen window, she swore she saw another version of herself. Pale, hollow-eyed, and listening. Lily had stopped going to school. She spent hours sitting in her room, murmuring softly to the doll. Whenever Claire tried to take it away, Lily screamed like something inside her was being ripped apart. The doctor said it was trauma. The priest said it was sin. So Claire did something she hadn't done since the funeral. She went back to church. The air inside St. Agnes was cold enough to bite. The candles burned weakly, their flames shivering as if afraid. Father Murray stood at the altar, an old man whose voice carried both gentleness and warning. He smiled when he saw her, though the smile faltered when Claire placed the porcelain doll on the pew beside her. I think there's something wrong with my daughter, she whispered during confession, voice trembling behind the grate. She talks to this doll. It knows things it shouldn't. The priest hesitated. Children often. It knows what I said to my husband before he died. A long silence followed. Then a soft sigh. Tell me everything, my child. So she did. About the fight, the storm, the ring, the whispers. When she finished, she expected sympathy. Forgiveness, maybe. Instead, Father Murray's voice cracked with unease. Where did you get it? The toy shop on Willow Street. The old priest drew a slow breath. That shop closed 20 years ago. Claire blinked. No, I was there last week. He didn't answer, only crossed himself and muttered a prayer under his breath. Then, in a tone almost fearful, he said, There was a girl once, Eleanor, the toymaker's daughter. She made a doll for herself and swore it could keep secrets. But when people began to die, the toymaker burned his workshop, with her still inside. Claire's throat went dry. Father Murray's hand trembled as he slid open the confessional screen. His face was pale. Bring the doll to me. Tonight. I'll bless it, and you mustn't keep it another day. She nodded, clutching the doll tighter. But as she rose to leave, she felt something warm and wet drip onto her hand. Blood. A fine line had opened on the doll's cheek, and it was bleeding. Father Murray gasped. "Child, put it down." But the doll's lips curved, ever so slightly, and then a whisper, so faint Claire thought it came from her own thoughts. "He hides his sins too." Father Murray froze. His candle flickered. The smell of burning wax filled the booth. "Get out," he whispered. "Take it and go." Claire stumbled into the aisle, shaking. The candles along the altar went out one by one, as though something was moving through the air, smothering the light. She turned to look back. Through the darkness of the confessional grate, she saw Father Murray's shadow. It wasn't praying. It was laughing. And when she reached home that night, the doll was sitting on her kitchen table, rosary beads around its neck, eyes glinting in the dark. A note rested beside it in that same childlike scrawl. Confession heard. Forgiveness denied. Episode 5. The Girl Who Never Slept. The fire in the fireplace had died hours ago, but Claire still couldn't sleep. The night pressed against the windows like something alive, whispering, shifting. Every creak, every sigh of the house sounded like a secret trying to claw its way out. Lily slept soundly beside the doll, her little arm draped across it as if protecting it. Claire sat in the hallway, clutching a cup of cold coffee, staring at the sliver of light under her daughter's door. She could hear the faintest murmur, two voices again. Lily's soft and sleepy, and another one, slower, older, sadder. "Tell me a story," Lily whispered. "I already am," the voice replied. "Do you want to hear how I never slept?" Claire's breath caught. She pressed her ear against the door. The voice continued, smooth as porcelain scraping on glass. "Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Eleanor who hated silence. She hated the way the nights stretched forever, how her mother prayed while her father screamed, and how no one ever listened. So one night, she made herself a friend, a doll carved from wood and porcelain scraps, stitched with her own hair. She whispered all her fears into it, every sin, every shame, and the doll whispered back, promising to make them all go away, and they did. Her father was the first to vanish, found in his bed with eyes open, mouth full of sawdust. Then her mother, who choked on her rosary beads. The neighbors found Eleanor sitting in the workshop, eyes wide, smiling, the doll in her lap. When they asked her what happened, she said, "She told me a secret, and now no one lies anymore." After that, she never slept again. The doll wouldn't let her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the people she loved whispering through the cracks in the walls, begging her to wake up. So she stayed awake, night after night until her heart gave up. But before she died, she whispered herself into the doll, so she could keep listening, so she'd never be alone again. Claire stumbled backward, the coffee cup slipping from her hand. The sound shattered the silence. "Lily!" she cried, bursting through the door. Her daughter sat up, eyes glassy, unfocused. The doll rested upright in her lap, facing Claire. Its porcelain face was cracked now, tiny fractures spreading like spiderwebs across its cheeks, but its lips were moving. "Eleanor doesn't want me to sleep," Lily said, voice flat. "She says if I do, she'll have to go back in the dark." Claire rushed forward, snatching the doll from her daughter's hands. "You're hurting her. Stop it!" She screamed at the thing, shaking it so hard the tiny head rattled. For a heartbeat, the air went still. Then, from inside the doll, faint and distant, came a small, choked giggle. "You can't hurt me, Mommy," the doll whispered in Lily's voice. "You made me." The lights flickered. Claire dropped it, horrified. When she looked again, the doll was gone. Lily was crying now, clutching her chest. She's cold, Mommy. Eleanor's cold. Claire pulled her close, shaking. It's okay, baby. It's just a bad dream. But then she saw it. A thin trail of dusty footprints leading from the bed to the window and out into the night. She followed them with her eyes until they disappeared into the woods beyond the house. And just as she turned away, the doll's faint voice echoed through the darkness, drifting through the open window, soft as a lullaby. You can sleep now, Claire. I'll stay awake for both of us. Episode 6, Lily's Friend. The morning light did nothing to chase away the shadows. They only hid behind the walls, waiting for the dark to return. Claire had barely slept since that night. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the trees outside made her heart race. She told herself the story, that it was just trauma, stress, delusion, over and over until the words lost meaning. But nothing could explain the things she'd seen. The muddy footprints, the voice that spoke from her daughter's throat, the truth she could no longer deny. Something had come into their lives, and it wasn't going to leave quietly. Lily seemed different. She no longer laughed when cartoons played, no longer asked for bedtime stories. Instead, she spent hours drawing, page after page filled with the same image. Two girls holding hands, one with braids and a smile, the other faceless. When Claire asked who they were, Lily said, "Me and Eleanor. She's my friend now. She says you don't like her, but that's okay." Claire tried to smile. "She's not real, sweetheart." Lily looked up, her small face unreadable. "She's more real than you think." That night, when Claire went to tuck her in, Lily whispered, "Eleanor says she can help you too. She says she knows what you hide." The words struck Claire like a knife. She froze. "What do you mean?" But Lily had already turned toward the wall, humming a strange tune. The same one Claire remembered hearing faintly on the night her husband died. At 3 a.m., the sound of laughter woke her. Not Lily's laughter. It was too deep, too old. Claire crept down the hall and stopped at her daughter's door. The room was bathed in the pale glow of the nightlight. Lily was sitting cross-legged on the floor, back straight, eyes wide open. The doll sat in front of her. Both were facing each other, like two people in conversation. "Lily," Claire whispered. Her daughter's head turned, movements jerky and unnatural. "We're busy, Mommy." The doll's head followed, turning toward Claire with a slow, deliberate creak. For a fraction of a second, she swore it smiled. Then Lily spoke again, but her voice was layered, two tones echoing as one, like a harmony sung from a throat too small to hold it. "She says you shouldn't be afraid. Secrets are only heavy if you keep them." Claire's knees weakened. "Stop it, baby. Please stop." Lily tilted her head, eyes empty. "Do you remember what you did after Daddy left? The pills, the water, the note you never finished." The room went silent. Claire's breath caught. No one knew about that night, not even the hospital staff. "Who told you that?" she whispered. Lily smiled faintly. "Eleanor remembers. She remembers everything." The lamp on the dresser flickered violently, then burst, plunging the room into darkness. Claire screamed and lunged forward, pulling Lily into her arms. The doll fell, hitting the floor with a hollow clink. And then, beneath the thunder of her pulse, Claire heard it whisper, faint, cold, and close to her ear, "She belongs to me now." When dawn came, Lily slept soundly, clutching her blanket. The doll sat neatly at the foot of the bed, its porcelain hand resting on Lily's ankle, as if claiming her. Claire tried to throw it away that morning. She drove 10 miles to the river and hurled it into the water. But when she came home, the doll was sitting on the kitchen table, dripping wet, smiling. And beside it, written in a child's hand, were 3 words that made her knees buckle. "We found you." Episode 7, The Toymaker's Curse. By now, Claire understood that fear had a smell. It lingered in the air like burnt paper. Sharp, metallic, impossible to wash away. It lived in the creases of her clothes, in her trembling hands, in the hollow of her daughter's eyes. Lily no longer spoke much. When she did, it was never entirely her voice. So Claire went looking for answers. The old archives of the town library were buried beneath layers of dust and time. Faded newspapers, brittle maps, the forgotten heartbeat of a place that preferred its past buried. Claire spent hours there, searching for Eleanor, for anything that could explain the doll that now ruled her home. It was in a newspaper dated March 1924 that she finally found it. Local girl dies in workshop fire. Daughter of toymaker Henry Wren believed to have perished in blaze that destroyed family business. Neighbors report screams, but firemen found only ashes, and a single doll, untouched by flame. Her breath hitched. Beneath the article was a grainy photograph of the shop, and there, in the corner of the window, the unmistakable figure of a porcelain doll with hollow eyes and cracked lips. Eleanor. Claire drove to what was left of the old Wren property, miles beyond the edge of town, swallowed by forest and silence. The air grew colder as she approached the ruins. The charred remains of the workshop still stood like broken teeth against the sky. Inside, everything smelled of rot and rust. She found scorched shelves, melted glass, a child's shoe half buried in soot. And then, behind the collapsed counter, she saw a trapdoor. It opened to a staircase leading down into darkness. The air was thick, damp, heavy with something alive. She descended slowly, flashlight trembling. The beam caught rows of shapes wrapped in cloth. Dolls, dozens of them, hanging from the ceiling like lifeless bodies. Each one had its eyes painted shut, except one. In the center of the room, on a small table, sat another porcelain doll. Its face was identical to the one in her home, but older, cracked with age, one eye missing. A tag hung around its neck. Property of H. Wren. Next to it lay an open journal, its pages brittle and stained. Claire turned it carefully, her pulse pounding as she read. She hears them now. Every whisper, every secret. The guilt feeds her. The more they confess, the stronger she becomes. I tried to destroy her, but she always finds a way back. She wants a family. She wants to be loved, but she doesn't know how. The next lines were written in thick, desperate strokes. Do not speak to her. Do not tell her your sins. She is made of confession, and she will unmake you with it. A noise broke the silence. Something small. A laugh. The flashlight flickered. At the top of the stairs stood Lily. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and she was holding the doll. The same one Claire had thrown into the river. Eleanor wanted to come home, she said softly. She missed her sisters. The dolls hanging from the ceiling began to sway, one by one. Their heads turned, porcelain cracking, faces splitting into silent smiles. Claire grabbed Lily and bolted up the stairs, slamming the trapdoor shut behind them. But before she reached the car, she heard a voice drift from beneath the floor, soft and sweet as a lullaby. Thank you for finding me, Mother. That night, when they returned home, every light in the house flickered at once. And there, sitting at the center of the living room, was the doll, dry now, clean, its cracks gone. On the wall above it, written in ash, were 5 words. The curse is never broken. Episode 8. The Mirror of Sin. There are moments when silence feels heavier than sound. Moments when the quiet becomes a living thing, pressing its cold fingers against your throat, waiting for you to breathe first. That's what the house had become. A mausoleum of whispers, where even the walls seemed to listen. Since the night at the toymaker's ruins, Claire had stopped pretending this was all in her head. Something ancient had followed them home. Something that wore porcelain and spoke with her daughter's tongue. And it was learning. Lily spent more and more time in front of the mirror. At first, Claire thought she was just playing, combing the doll's hair, talking to her reflection. But then she noticed the reflection wasn't quite right. Lily would move her hand, and the reflection lagged a second behind. Sometimes the doll in the mirror blinked when the real one didn't. "Lily," Claire whispered one morning, "come away from there." Her daughter turned, smiling faintly. "She wants to show you something." "Who?" "Eleanor." Lily lifted the doll toward the mirror. For a second, the reflection shimmered and then changed. The doll's face inside the glass smiled wider than porcelain should allow. Its eyes rolled upward, showing black veins beneath the glaze. The glass rippled like water. Claire gasped, pulling Lily back. The reflection of the doll remained alone in the mirror, smiling, whispering words they couldn't hear. Then, slowly, the surface began to bleed. Thin lines of crimson trickled down the glass, spelling out a single sentence. "I see what you hide." Claire stumbled backward, heart pounding. But Lily only stared, calm and unblinking. "She says it's not blood," she murmured. "She says it's memory." That night, Claire covered every mirror in the house with sheets. But as the moon rose, faint shapes began to appear beneath the fabric, shadows of faces pressing from the inside, mouths moving silently. When she tore the sheet away, her own reflection stared back, except it wasn't hers. The face looked older, hollowed, bruised by guilt. And behind it, reflected in the hallway, stood Mark, her husband, soaked, broken, eyes full of accusation. "Why, Claire?" his reflection asked. His lips didn't move, but his voice echoed from the mirror, thick and wet like drowning breath. "Why didn't you save me?" she screamed, stumbling back. The sheet fell over the glass again, and the voice was gone. From Lily's room came laughter, soft, rhythmic, not quite human. Claire burst in to find her daughter standing before a mirror she'd forgotten to cover. The doll sat on the dresser, facing its reflection. Lily's eyes were glazed, her small hands reaching toward the glass. "Eleanor says you lied," she said quietly. "You didn't try to save Daddy. You watched." Claire's legs gave way. "That's not true." The mirror cracked. From the fracture, a faint red light pulsed. And in the reflection, Claire saw herself standing behind Lily, hands covered in blood. The reflection smiled. "Now you remember." The mirror shattered, exploding into the room. Shards of glass rained down like silver rain, slicing through the silence. Claire pulled Lily close, shielding her. But when she looked up, the doll was gone. Only its reflection remained, in every broken shard on the floor. 100 tiny faces, all smiling. And from somewhere deep within the glass, a whisper echoed like a lullaby. "Confession brings clarity. Look closer." At dawn, Claire found the doll sitting at the dining table again. Untouched, perfect, waiting. But every mirror in the house had changed. They no longer showed reflections, only memories. And in each of them, the same thing was written in blood. Sins never fade. They repeat. Episode 9, The Town That Forgot. By the time the first snow fell, the town had started to forget. It began quietly, like rot under paint. Names slipped from memory, faces blurred. The postman forgot his route. The butcher forgot the names of his own children. At first, everyone laughed it off as fatigue, the long winter creeping into their minds. But then they forgot the roads, the streets, the people they'd loved for decades. and somehow no one remembered Claire and Lily Wren. Claire noticed it first at the grocery store. She smiled at Mrs. Danner, the old woman who used to bring Lily cookies every Sunday. "Morning," Claire said softly. The woman blinked, puzzled. "I'm sorry, dear. Do I know you?" Claire's breath caught. "It's me, Claire. We live 2 houses down." The woman frowned, glancing toward Lily. "What a lovely child. Is she new in town?" Claire's stomach twisted. She turned to Lily, whose small hand was locked around the porcelain doll. The doll's painted smile looked wider under the fluorescent light. When they returned home, something was different. The photographs on the walls, the family portraits, Lily's drawings, all had faint smudges where their faces should have been, as if someone had wiped them away. And then the phone rang. "Hello." Static. Then a man's voice, distant and broken. "Who are you?" The line went dead. Claire stared at the phone, trembling. On the screen, her own name appeared in the call history, as if she had called herself. That night, she sat by Lily's bed, desperate for sleep that wouldn't come. "Mommy," Lily whispered. "Eleanor says people forget when they lie too much. It's easier that way." "What do you mean?" "She says memories are heavy. She's helping them forget the bad ones." Claire shook her head. "She's hurting them, Lily. She's making them disappear." Lily frowned. "Eleanor says disappearing is the same as forgiving." Claire's heart sank. "Where is she, Lily? Where's the doll?" Her daughter pointed to the window. Outside, under the cold moonlight, the doll sat on the fence, facing the town. Its cracked face gleamed with frost, eyes reflecting something far away. And down the hill, lights began to flicker across the neighborhood. House by house, street by street. Each time a light went out, a name vanished from Claire's memory. Her friends, her neighbors, the priest. When she tried to recall their faces, her mind hit a blank wall of silence. The doll turned its head toward her. "You see?" It whispered from outside, though its lips didn't move. "They forget so you can start over." Claire slammed the window shut, heart pounding. But when she turned back to Lily, her daughter was staring blankly at her. "Who are you?" Lily asked softly. Claire froze. "Lily, it's Mommy." Her daughter tilted her head. "Eleanor says you're not my mommy anymore." By morning, the town's main street was empty. No cars, no voices, just the echo of wind through the signs that no longer bore names. Claire drove through, searching for anyone who remembered. The bakery, the post office, even the church, all abandoned. On the church doors, words had been carved into the wood, deep and jagged. "Memory is mercy." Her phone buzzed. A message. No number. Just 3 words. "Lily is free." When she raced home, the house was silent. The bed was empty. The doll was gone. And on the wall, in Lily's handwriting, written with something that looked too dark to be ink, were the words, "Don't remember me." At dusk, Claire stood in the middle of the street, clutching the last photo she had. A picture of her and Lily. But even there, their faces had vanished, leaving 2 gray silhouettes beneath the snow. The wind carried a child's laughter from somewhere far away, and beneath it, the faint porcelain whisper of a voice she would never forget. No matter how much the world did, forgetting is the only way to forgive. Episode 10, The Sound of Porcelain Cracking. It began with a faint clicking sound. Soft, repetitive, familiar. At first, Claire thought it was the wind against the windows. But the rhythm was too precise, like fingernails tapping on glass. It followed her through the house, from room to room, until she realized it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the walls. The town was gone now. Empty streets, silent houses, names erased like chalk in the rain. Claire wandered through what was left, clutching the photograph with no faces, whispering her daughter's name into the void. "Lily, please." No one answered, only the clicking, click, click, crack. Sometimes it came from the attic, sometimes from beneath the floorboards, always just close enough to hear, never close enough to find. The house had become her cage, and somewhere inside, the doll was alive again. That night, the whispering started. She was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the clock, when the air shifted. The walls seemed to inhale. A low hum filled the room, rising from the floor like a heartbeat. Then came the voice. "Do you remember the lie?" Claire froze. "No," she whispered. The voice was everywhere, layered, echoing, childlike and ancient at once. "You said he deserved it. You said love was supposed to hurt." Her eyes filled with tears. "Stop it. You lied to him, Claire. You lied to her too." The light above her flickered violently. On the table, cracks began to spread across the porcelain teacup in her hand. It shattered with a sharp pop, and from somewhere deep in the house, the same sound answered, louder, sharper. Crack. Claire followed the sound upstairs. The walls were bleeding fine dust. Tiny pieces of plaster fell like ash, revealing long, thin fractures running from ceiling to floor. Each crack pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. She reached Lily's old room. The door was half open, the air inside colder than the rest of the house. The doll sat in the middle of the floor, perfectly still, perfectly clean. But the sound crack, crack, crack was coming from it. Hairline fractures snaked across its porcelain face, splitting the perfect white surface into a spiderweb of veins. Through each fracture, something dark pulsed, like tar. Claire fell to her knees. "Please," she whispered. "Give her back to me." The doll's head tilted, a faint grinding noise beneath the movement. Then, in Lily's voice, it spoke. "You never lost her. You made me to keep her safe." "What?" Claire gasped. "You prayed for her to stay." I answered. The walls groaned. Mirrors shattered one by one, reflecting hundreds of tiny, distorted versions of the doll. Each one cracking, splintering, whispering. Claire clutched her ears, screaming. "I didn't mean it." "You did," the voice hissed. "When the car went into the river, you begged for her to live. You begged anything to keep her." Claire's breath caught. She remembered. The rain, the scream, the water swallowing the car. Mark's hands on the wheel. Lily's cry, and her desperate words. "Please, God, don't take her. Take anything else." Her vision blurred. She fell to the floor. The doll stood now, its fractures glowing faintly red. The voice that came next was neither Lily's nor Eleanor's. It was hers. "You traded a soul for a secret, and secrets break." Then the sound again, louder, final. Crack. The doll's face split completely in half. From within, something black and shapeless crawled out. Small hands, long hair, eyes like hollow wells. Claire screamed and stumbled backward, but the figure reached out gently, touching her cheek. It was Lily, or what was left of her. "Mommy," she whispered. "It's okay. It's only porcelain." And then her skin began to crack too. When dawn came, the house stood silent once more. Inside, dust floated in the pale light. On the floor, where the doll had been, lay hundreds of tiny shards, all humming faintly, like they were breathing. And on the wall, written in the same childlike hand as before, were the words, "Every secret must break." Episode 11, The Doll's Diary. There are sounds that never leave you. The shattering of porcelain is one of them. It doesn't fade. It lingers, like an echo of something that shouldn't have been broken. Claire heard it long after the doll was gone. Long after Lily's voice had vanished into the silence. Each night, she dreamed of the same thing. A small hand reaching through black water, porcelain fingers brushing against her own. When she woke, her palm still felt cold, as if she had truly touched it. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time no longer moved the same way in that house. Claire stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Her world had narrowed to one obsession: the truth. If the doll was born from guilt, if it carried memory and sin, then somewhere there had to be a record. She tore through every corner of the house, searching for it, drawers, walls, under floorboards, until, behind the baseboard in Lily's room, she found something hidden in the wood. A small compartment. Inside it, a book. Its cover was made of cracked leather, soft and damp, as if it had been buried for years. Across it, written in childish scrawl, was a name: Eleanor's Diary. The first pages were harmless. Childish thoughts about dolls and dreams. About a father who never smiled and a mother who always prayed too long. But halfway through, the handwriting changed. Sharper. Angrier. I told the doll my secret today. She said she would keep it. She said she would make them listen. Father said I was wicked for lying, so she made him stop yelling. Mother said the devil lived in me, so she gave him a new home. Claire's hands shook as she turned the pages. The ink darkened until it wasn't ink anymore. It was brown, thick, old. They put me in the ground, but I'm not gone. I can still hear them. They still have secrets, and secrets need a listener. I can't sleep. I never sleep. The doll stays awake for me. The next page was stuck together. When Claire carefully pried it open, a small object fell out. A folded photograph, faded and torn. It showed a man standing outside the toymaker's shop in 1924. His face was smeared by time, but his eyes, cold, hollow, looked disturbingly familiar. Her breath caught. It was Mark. The same face, the same eyes. Underneath the photo, a note was scrawled in that same childish hand. The sins repeat. The faces return. Claire dropped the diary. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Couldn't be. Mark hadn't even been born in 1924. But then she remembered something he had once said, half asleep, voice trembling in a nightmare. She's still in the water. She never stopped listening. The lights flickered. The diary's pages began to turn on their own, whipping faster and faster, as if caught in a storm that existed only inside the book. From somewhere deep within the house, that clicking sound returned. Louder now, closer. Claire slammed the diary shut, but it pulsed in her hands, a faint heartbeat beneath the cover. Then, written across the last page in fresh ink, words began to appear on their own. You read my secrets. Now I'll read yours. The lamp shattered. The air turned freezing cold. The voice that filled the room was neither Lily's nor Eleanor's. It was hers. You traded memory for mercy. You can't have both. The diary tore itself open, pages glowing faintly red, and from its center, a tiny porcelain hand pushed through the paper. Then another. The doll was writing itself back into the world. Claire stumbled backward, screaming. The diary fell open on the floor, pages flapping violently like wings. And when it stopped, when the silence returned, the book lay open to a single, fresh page. Across it, written in ink that was still wet, was a new entry. My name is Claire Wren. I told the doll my secret tonight. She promised to keep it. Episode 12. Voices Beneath the Floor. The diary hadn't moved in 3 days, but it breathed. At night, when the house grew still, Claire could hear it sigh beneath the floorboards. A low, rhythmic pulse, like something sleeping under her feet. Each time she tried to move it, The temperature in the room dropped, and the pages fluttered as if warning her. Don't. So she left it there. But it didn't leave her. She began hearing the voices again. Not whispers this time, breathing. It came from the cracks in the walls, from beneath the wooden planks, from the vent beside her bed. A slow, deliberate inhale and exhale that followed her like a heartbeat she didn't own. When she pressed her ear to the floor one night, she heard words behind the breath. We're still here. She jumped back, pulse pounding. Dust fell from the ceiling. The house seemed to groan, not from age but from memory. It wanted to speak. At dawn, she armed herself with a flashlight and a crowbar. She tore up the floorboards in Lily's room, one by one, until the smell of wet earth filled the air. Beneath the wood was a layer of dirt, dark and damp, as if the ground itself had been crying. Her flashlight beam caught something white, glimmering. Porcelain. Dozens of porcelain faces lay buried beneath the house, some cracked, some whole, all staring upward with empty eyes. Their mouths were open as if frozen mid-scream, and in the center, half buried in the soil, was the doll. The same one, the only one. Its eyes flicked open. Welcome back, it whispered. Claire stumbled backward, the flashlight shaking in her grip. You're not real. You're not real. The doll smiled faintly. Real is only what's remembered. The diary upstairs began to thrum. A steady vibration, like the heartbeat of something waking. The buried faces beneath the floor started to move, their mouths widening as the whispering grew louder. Claire covered her ears, screaming, but the voices bled through her hands. Dozens of them, all speaking at once, layering into a single sound that was neither human nor alive. Confess. The floorboards shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow. What do you want from me? Claire cried. Truth. The voice came from everywhere. From the walls, from the dirt, from inside her own chest. You already know it, she shouted. I told you. I begged you to save her. Silence. Then gently, almost tenderly, no. You begged to keep her. The house fell still. The air thickened with something warm, metallic. Claire looked down. The dirt beneath her feet had turned red. Blood. And it was rising. She scrambled to her feet, but the doll's porcelain hand shot out from the soil, gripping her ankle with impossible strength. Eleanor's gone. It hissed. Now there's only you. She swung the crowbar, smashing its face. Once, twice, 3 times. The porcelain shattered into 1,000 pieces, but when she fell to the ground gasping, the whisper didn't stop. Came from below the fragments. The floor beneath her began to crack open, revealing darkness. A pit, endless and wet, filled with soft murmurs that sounded almost like crying. She peered into it and saw Lily. Her daughter stood in the blackness, pale and perfect, her dress soaked, her eyes as hollow as the doll's. Mommy, Lily said softly. I'm still down here. Claire screamed and reached for her, but the darkness pulled back, swallowing her whole. The floor slammed shut. When Claire woke, she was lying in the hallway. The crowbar was gone. The hole was gone. But the diary sat open beside her, its pages wet and smeared with dirt. A fresh line of writing glistened across the last page. You can bury the doll, but not the truth. She's still beneath you. That night, Claire moved her bed to the living room. But as she lay there, eyes open, too afraid to sleep, she heard it again. From deep below the floorboards, a soft, rhythmic knocking. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats again. And then a whisper, barely audible, rising up through the cracks like breath through a grave. Good night, Mommy. Episode 13. The Collector. The snow had buried the town in silence. It covered everything. The houses, the roads, even the memories that still dared to whisper beneath the earth. But the Wren house stood untouched, its roof bare, its windows glowing faintly in the night like eyes that refused to close. Inside, Claire hadn't spoken in days. She'd stopped counting time after the floor bled. Sleep came in trembling fragments, and even then she woke to the faint sound of breathing. Not hers, not human. And then one morning, there was a knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The same rhythm that came from beneath the floor. When she opened it, a man stood there. Tall, lean, dressed in black from hat to boots. His smile was polite, but his eyes were too pale, the kind that had seen too much. "Mrs. Wren," he said smoothly. "You've been very hard to find." Claire gripped the doorframe. "Who are you?" He tipped his hat slightly. "My name is Mr. Dorian Vale. I'm a collector of rare things. I believe you possess one." Her blood ran cold. "The doll." His smile widened. "Ah, so you know which one." He stepped across the threshold before she could stop him, his boots leaving no prints on the dusty floor. He glanced around the room like a man walking through a museum of ghosts. "Eleanor's work," he murmured. "Beautiful, isn't it? Perfect vessel." The old toymaker never understood what he'd created. "But you," he turned, eyes glinting. "You completed it." "I didn't make it," Claire snapped. "It found us." "Nothing finds us by accident," he said softly. "It was waiting for someone with enough guilt to feed it." He walked to the living room, where the broken shards of porcelain still lay in a bowl on the table, the remains of the doll. The moment his hand hovered above them, the pieces trembled. "She's awake," he said, almost reverently. "Still hungry, I imagine." Claire backed away. "Take it. Burn it. I don't care." He looked at her sharply. "Burn it? Oh no, Mrs. Wren. You don't destroy something like this. You contain it. You collect it before it collects you." "What are you talking about?" He crouched, gathering the fragments with delicate precision, as if handling the bones of a saint. Eleanor was the first, yes, but there were others. The confessional toys, the mirror spirits, the dolls of regret. They all come from the same hunger, the need to be remembered. He placed the shards into a small black case lined with red velvet. As he closed it, the whispers in the house seemed to quiet, for the first time in weeks. Claire exhaled shakily. "It's over." Mr. Vale smiled faintly. "For you? Not yet." He turned to leave, but before stepping out the door, he paused. "Tell me, Mrs. Wren," he said, "when you look in the mirror, do you still see your reflection?" She frowned. "What?" He nodded toward the hallway mirror behind her. "Go on. Look." Against every instinct, she turned. Her reflection stood there, but it wasn't moving. Its eyes were wide, its mouth slightly open, as if frozen mid-breath. Behind it, in the mirror, stood a child, Lily, smiling. Claire stumbled backward, gasping. When she looked again, both reflections were gone. Mr. Vale closed his case gently. "She's still attached to you," he said. "The bond doesn't break just because the body does." "Then what do I do?" she pleaded. He gave her a sympathetic look, the kind of pity reserved for those already damned. "Pray she forgets your name before she remembers hers." He stepped into the snow and was gone. That night, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. Claire sat by the window, staring at the white world outside. The silence felt like peace for the first time, until she saw them, faint silhouettes in the distance. Dozens of people motionless in the snow. She squinted. They weren't people. They were dolls. Hundreds of them, standing in perfect rows, their porcelain faces tilted toward her window. And at the front of the line, holding Mr. Vale's black case in her small, pale hands, was Lily. Her cracked lips parted. "He collects us," she whispered. "But I collect you." Episode 14. The day the dolls moved. The snow melted overnight. By morning, the streets glistened like mirrors, and the air smelled of rust. Not from weather, but from something older. Something waking. Claire hadn't slept. The image of those porcelain figures standing in the snow haunted her every blink. She told herself they were gone, just shadows and exhaustion, but she knew better. Shadows didn't whisper your name in the dark. And last night something had. She woke to the sound of footsteps, soft, deliberate, multiplying. They came from the hallway first, then the attic, then the walls. Tiny feet pattering, skittering, like 1,000 fingernails tapping the inside of the house. She froze, clutching the old fireplace poker, breath shallow. Then came the sound of laughter, high-pitched, childlike, endless. She stepped into the hall. Every door in the house was open. At the far end, she saw one of them. A doll, standing upright on the floor, its cracked face turned toward her. A second stood beside it. Then a third. One by one they began to move, not walking, jerking. Their limbs twitched like marionettes pulled by invisible strings, heads snapping side to side, eyes rolling beneath glass lids. Their feet scraped the wood, leaving faint trails of ash. And then they spoke. "Good morning, Mommy." The voice came from all of them at once. Claire stumbled backward, heart hammering. She swung the poker, smashing the nearest doll. It shattered, but from its porcelain remains, black smoke hissed out, coiling upward like breath. The other dolls didn't react. They just tilted their heads in unison, watching. "You shouldn't have broken her," they said together. "She remembers pain." Claire ran. She burst into the kitchen, slamming the door, barricading it with a chair. Her hands shook as she reached for the phone, but there was no dial tone, only a low, rhythmic sound, faint but distinct. Click, click, crack. The same sound the doll had made when it began to fracture. She dropped the phone. The sound didn't stop. It was coming from the window. When she looked up, her blood froze. Outside, across the yard, hundreds of dolls stood facing the house. Their white faces gleamed under the gray light, blank eyes reflecting her own terror. Some were missing limbs, others had smiles painted too wide, too wrong. At their center stood Lily, pale, unmoving, eyes black as obsidian. The ground began to tremble. Every doll lifted its head at once. The snow cracked beneath their feet as they stepped forward in perfect synchrony. Each movement was a soft click, each step in time with the next. Inside, the furniture shook. The walls groaned. The floorboards beneath Claire's feet pulsed like veins. She grabbed the matches, desperate. "If you want fire," she whispered, voice breaking, "I'll give you fire." She struck a match, but before she could drop it, a voice came from behind her. "You can't burn what remembers you." She turned. The dolls were inside now, crawling from the fireplace, sliding from under the cabinets, emerging from the cracks in the walls like insects shedding skin. Their tiny hands reached for her, cold and smooth. She screamed, swinging wildly, knocking them back, but for every one she broke, two more appeared. The lights flickered. Her reflection in the kitchen window twisted, and for a moment, she saw herself as one of them. Porcelain skin, hollow eyes, smiling through the cracks. The front door burst open. Mr. Dorian Vale stepped inside, his black coat sweeping the air. In one hand, he held his red velvet case. In the other, a thin rod of silver etched with symbols that seemed to burn. "Mrs. Wren," he shouted. "Stay still." He plunged the silver rod into the floor. The dolls shrieked, a collective wail that rattled the windows. Their faces cracked, their limbs locked mid-motion, their glass eyes bursting one by one. When the silence finally fell, Claire collapsed to her knees, trembling. Mr. Vale knelt beside her, his pale eyes unreadable. "You shouldn't have touched her diary," he said quietly. "The moment you did, you became her keeper." Claire shook her head. "Take them. Take all of them." He looked at her sadly. "I can't. They've already taken you." She followed his gaze to her hands. They were no longer skin. They were porcelain. Tiny fractures ran up her wrists, catching the firelight like veins of glass. And when she opened her mouth to scream, the sound that came out wasn't human. It was the sound of porcelain cracking. Episode 15, The Child Without a Shadow. By the time the sun rose, Claire's shadow was gone. She stood before the cracked window, staring at the faint morning light spreading across the floor, light that bent around her but did not catch her. Her reflection still lingered in the glass, pale and hollow, but on the floor there was nothing. No outline, no proof that she existed. It was as if the world had begun to forget her too. Mr. Dorian Vale sat in the corner, watching her quietly. His black case rested on his lap like a coffin. "The transformation is almost complete," he said softly. "She's taking what's left of you." Claire didn't turn. "Lily," he nodded once. "Or what's wearing her?" That night, the temperature in the house dropped again. Frost crept across the windows in thin veins, spelling words she didn't want to read. Mothers must keep their promises. The dolls Mr. Vale had frozen earlier were gone, leaving faint handprints in the dust. Small, perfect, and endless. Claire wrapped herself in a blanket, trembling. Her skin felt cold, almost smooth, porcelain. When she pressed her fingers to her cheek, she could hear the faint click of something hard beneath her skin. "What happens if she finishes it?" she asked. Mr. Vale didn't look up. "Then you won't be here to ask." The whispering began again around midnight. Claire crept down the hall toward Lily's old room, where the light was flickering beneath the door. Each step felt heavier, her joints stiffening like a marionette pulled too tight. She pushed the door open. Lily sat by the window, moonlight pouring over her. Her small frame was motionless, her head tilted just enough for Claire to see that her eyes had turned completely black. And on the floor beneath her chair, no shadow. "Lily," Claire whispered. Her daughter turned slowly, her voice soft, melodic, too calm. "Eleanor says I don't need a shadow anymore. She says I am one." Claire's throat closed. "You're not her. You're my daughter." "Am I?" Lily asked. "Or am I what you begged for?" The mirror across the room rippled, and for a heartbeat, Claire saw the truth. The night of the crash, her hands on the car door, her prayer whispered into the storm. "Take me, not her." But something else had answered. Mr. Vale appeared in the doorway, his voice firm but low. "Step away from the child, Mrs. Wren." Lily smiled faintly. "You came back. The collector who thinks he can own what's been promised." The lights flickered, then burst. The room filled with the sound of porcelain breaking, over and over, 1,000 cracks echoing through the walls. Lily rose from the chair, her feet not touching the ground. The air shimmered around her, and the shadows of every doll that had ever been in that house began to crawl across the walls, converging on her small frame. Claire reached out, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Lily, fight her." Lily's voice broke. For a second, it was hers again. "Mommy, it hurts." "I know, baby, I know." For the first time in weeks, Claire saw her daughter's eyes, brown, human, trembling. Then Eleanor's voice came from everywhere at once. "A mother's love never dies. It just changes shape." The floor cracked open beneath them. Mr. Vale lunged forward, shoving Claire out of the way as the board splintered. The child, or what had been her, fell backward into the darkness, swallowed by the same whispering void that had taken everything else. Claire screamed until her voice broke. The silence that followed was unbearable. When it was over, Claire sat alone on the floor. Mr. Vale stood beside her, holding what was left of the doll, its cracked face now completely hollow, its eyes empty. "She's gone," Claire whispered. He nodded. "No, she's waiting." Claire looked down at the floor. The shadows had returned. The table, the furniture, Mr. Vale, all casting long, trembling shapes in the pale dawn light. All except her. She still had none. As the morning wind carried the scent of ash through the broken house, Mr. Vale placed the hollow doll gently into his case and closed it with a click. "Where are you taking her?" Claire asked. He turned toward the door, his silhouette long and sharp across the floor. "To the next mother who can't let go." And as he stepped outside, the faint sound of a child's laugh drifted from somewhere deep within the shadows. A laugh that once belonged to Lily, but no longer did. Episode 16. The Deal. The snow returned the next night, slow, deliberate flakes that fell like ashes, covering the wreckage of everything that once resembled a home. Claire sat by the window, wrapped in silence. She didn't cry anymore. Even her tears had turned to glass. They slid down her cheeks, cold and unmelting, shattering softly when they hit the floor. Mr. Dorian Vale was gone. He had left her with 3 things: the key to his red velvet case, a candle that refused to die, and a warning. "If she calls again," he'd said, "don't answer." Some prayers don't need to be heard twice. But Claire had already decided. She was going to answer. The diary lay open before her, the pages faintly glowing, breathing like a living thing. On its final blank sheet, words began to carve themselves in red, letter by letter, as if written from beneath the paper. "Do you miss her?" Claire's hands trembled. "More than life. Would you trade life for her?" She swallowed. "If that's what it takes." The candle flickered violently, its flame turning blue. The air thickened, humming low like the sound of something vast moving in the dark. "Then you already have." The words bled across the page like veins, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The ground beneath the chair began to tremble. From between the floorboards seeped a thin line of red light. Not blood, but something thicker, older, alive. The whisper came again, soft and familiar. "You made a promise, Mommy." The temperature dropped. Frost climbed the walls like spiderwebs. "I didn't know what I was doing," Claire whispered. "You asked to keep her. You begged not to lose her. And I gave you what you wanted." The voice was Eleanor's, but deeper now, layered, hollow, filled with centuries of regret. "You tricked me," Claire said, voice breaking. "No, you tricked yourself." The candlelight bent, forming shapes, a child's outline small and still. The air shimmered as Lily appeared, standing barefoot in the snow outside the window. Her dress was soaked, her hair clung to her face, and her eyes glowed faintly from within. "Mommy," she whispered through the glass. "I'm cold." Claire's breath hitched. "Come in, baby. Please come inside." The girl shook her head slowly. "You can't bring me in. You can only come out." And then Claire understood. The deal was never about life or death. It was about exchange. Lily hadn't been taken. She'd been kept. And now the debt was due. Claire stood, the candle trembling in her hand. "If I take her place," she said softly, "will you let her go?" The voice answered from everywhere at once. The floor, the ceiling, the pages of the diary. "That's the only way it ends." She stepped toward the window. Outside, the snow swirled violently around Lily's shape, the wind crying like a choir of ghosts. The closer she came, the more her reflection began to fade from the glass. Her eyes grew darker, her breath shallower, her heart slowing to match the rhythm of the whispers beneath the house. "Mommy!" Lily's voice trembled now, the first time it had sounded truly human in weeks. "Don't. I promised I'd never leave you." She pressed her palm against the glass. The surface rippled like water. The flame in the candle stretched toward her hand, wrapping around her wrist like a burning ribbon. "You'll forget," the voice said gently. "But she'll live." Claire smiled faintly. "That's all I ever wanted." She stepped forward, through the glass, through the cold, through the scream of wind and memory. The candle went out. When morning came, the snow had stopped. Mr. Vale returned to the house hours later. It was silent, clean, and empty. On the windowsill sat the red velvet case, open. Inside it lay a single porcelain doll, its eyes closed, its expression peaceful, almost loving. And sitting beside it, alive and warm, was Lily. She blinked up at him, confused. "Where's my mommy?" Mr. Vale hesitated, then knelt down. "She's keeping her promise." He closed the case gently, locking it with the brass key. As he turned to leave, the doll's lips curved into the faintest smile, and from inside the sealed box came one soft whisper, fragile as breath. "Good night, my love." Episode 17, The Town That Heard the Truth. Morning came to Hollow Creek like a lie. The snow glistened, the sky was clear, and the world pretended to be new again. But beneath that fragile calm, something had changed. Every house, every window, every church bell, they all remembered. And they had begun to speak. It started in whispers. Old radios turned themselves on, murmuring faint voices between static. Televisions flickered with faces that weren't part of any broadcast. In the post office, an abandoned phone rang every hour on the hour. And when someone finally answered, they heard their own voice saying the thing they'd sworn never to admit. By noon, the whole town was trembling. At St. Agnes, Father Murray's sermons were drowned out by the echo of his own sins. A voice booming from the pulpit in his tone, confessing what he'd hidden for 40 years. In the diner, the cook's old transistor whispered to him about the fire he'd started for insurance money. At the school, the intercom turned on by itself and a child's voice whispered every lie the teachers had ever told. Hollow Creek had become a choir of confessions. Mr. Dorian Vale stood at the center of Main Street, coat flapping in the wind, eyes scanning the horizon. He knew the sound, the hum of a truth that had escaped its keeper. The curse had moved beyond one house. The doll was no longer a vessel. It was a mouth. He opened the red velvet case. The porcelain figure inside was gone. Only the candle remained, still lit, its flame burning sideways against the wind. "She's awake," he muttered. "And she's louder now." In a small house at the edge of town, Lily sat by the window. Her reflection was wrong again. Smiled when she didn't. "Mommy?" she whispered. The reflection nodded. "I'm here." "Why is everyone talking like that?" "Because they kept secrets too," the reflection said gently. "And secrets are heavy. I'm helping them let go." Lily frowned. "You sound sad." The reflection tilted its head, the exact way the doll once had. "Sadness is what love turns into when it can't stop." Then, faintly, through the window pane, came the voice of the town itself. Thousands of whispers layering into one. "We remember." By nightfall, Hollow Creek was glowing. Every television screen, every mirror, every phone lit up with the same image. Claire Wren, her face, pale, luminous, peaceful, hovered in the static, whispering words no one could quite make out. But each person heard their own truth in her voice. Some fell to their knees sobbing. Others ran into the streets, desperate to drown the sound. And then the lights went out. All at once. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. When the power returned, every window in town bore the same message, written from the inside in pale frost. She kept her promise. Mr. Vale found Lily hours later, asleep on the porch. The candle burned beside her, its flame low and trembling. He lifted her gently, wrapping his coat around her small body. As he turned to leave, he saw the faint outline of a woman standing at the tree line, motionless, watching. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "Claire," he whispered. The figure smiled, her lips pale as snow. "Keep her safe," she said, her voice echoing in his head though she hadn't moved her mouth. "I'll keep the rest quiet." Before he could speak, she faded, dissolving into the wind. Her voice carried across the empty streets. Confession brings peace. And for the first time in years, the town of Hollow Creek fell truly silent. But somewhere, deep beneath the earth, Under the snow, under the roots, under the church that once housed prayers, something shifted. A soft crack. A familiar whisper. Peace never lasts. Episode 18. The Final Secret. Snow fell again that night, not from the sky but from the air itself. It drifted upward, weightless and wrong, as if gravity had grown tired of holding the world together. Mr. Dorian Vale felt it first. The pulse beneath the town, that faint trembling that made his teeth ache and his hands go numb. Hollow Creek was breathing again. But it wasn't the town. It was her. Lily had stopped speaking. Since the night the town confessed itself into madness, she hadn't said a word. She only drew, page after page of the same thing. A woman standing in the middle of a frozen field, surrounded by hundreds of tiny, faceless dolls. And above her, scrawled in trembling handwriting, were 5 words. She remembers what you forgot. Mr. Vale burned every drawing, but they always came back. Sometimes in her hands, sometimes pinned to the walls, sometimes carved into the frost on the windows while she slept. He knew the signs. The curse wasn't ending. It was beginning again. That night, he lit the eternal candle, the one Claire had left behind. The flame flickered blue, then deep red, a color he'd only seen once before, decades ago, when another collector had failed to contain what was now inside Lily. The air trembled. The mirrors in the house began to hum, vibrating like struck glass. He turned, and there, in the reflection, stood Claire. Her eyes were darker now, her skin pale as snow, veins like fine cracks spreading beneath the surface. "Hello, Dorian," she said softly. He didn't move. "You shouldn't be here." Her smile was small, tragic. "I never left. You of all people should know that. You collect things, and I became one." He tightened his grip on the candle. "What are you now?" Claire tilted her head, just slightly, the same motion Eleanor once made before the doll spoke. "I'm the truth you tried to bury." The room darkened. The walls pulsed with a faint heartbeat. Every photograph in the house, even those of people long dead, began to whisper. "You think you're the keeper," she said, stepping closer. "But you were just another confessor. You didn't contain us, Dorian. You fed us." He shook his head. "No. I sealed them. The artifacts. The vessels. I kept the world safe." Her eyes flickered red. "Safe? Look outside." He turned toward the window. The snow wasn't snow. It was ash. And beneath it, half buried in the frost, hundreds of porcelain hands were reaching upward from the ground. Small, delicate, moving. "Every confession you took," she whispered. "Every sin you tried to store away, we heard them. We became them." Lily appeared behind her mother's ghostly figure, her eyes faintly glowing. "Mommy says you have to tell the truth now," she murmured. Vale's pulse quickened. "What truth?" Claire's form flickered, the cracks on her skin spreading wider. "The one you erased. The one that began all this." He stumbled back, shaking his head. "No, it's gone. I destroyed it." But she only smiled. "You can't destroy what remembers you." The candlelight flared, revealing the black case on the table. It was shaking violently, its latch rattling. Vale hesitated, then opened it. Inside wasn't the doll. It was a mirror, and in it he saw himself. Not as he was, but as he had been, young, trembling, standing in the toymaker's workshop 100 years ago. Eleanor's father beside him, the doll half finished. He remembered now. He was the apprentice. He was the one who had painted the first eyes. And when the child begged him to help her make it listen, he had whispered the incantation that bound her soul. He had created her. The room began to collapse. Glass shattered. The air screamed. The walls bled frost and flame. Claire's voice rose above it all, calm, unbroken, sorrowful. "Now you understand. Secrets don't stay buried. They wait for their maker." Mr. Vale dropped to his knees, clutching the mirror as cracks spread across its surface, across his reflection. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but Claire's face softened. "So was I." The candle went out. The mirror shattered. When the silence returned, the town of Hollow Creek was gone. In its place stood a frozen field, glittering under a red dawn. And in the center of that field was a single porcelain doll, sitting upright, eyes closed, face peaceful, waiting. Beneath it, half buried in the snow, was a black case. Its latch slowly clicked open on its own, and from the darkness inside came a single whisper, older than guilt, older than time itself. "I remember everything." Episode 19. The doll breaks. The dawn over Hollow Creek was wrong. The sky bled a color it wasn't meant to hold. Not red, not gold, but something between wound and memory. The air tasted of burnt porcelain and snow. What remained of the town slept beneath the frost, still whispering, still remembering. And at the center of it all, the doll waited. Her eyes were closed now, her skin fine as glass, her hair tangled with threads of black ice. She looked peaceful, too peaceful, like a god resting after creation. But beneath that stillness, something pulsed, something alive. She was dreaming, and in her dream, the world confessed itself once more. Far away, Dorian Vale awoke beneath a ruined church, half buried in ash and snow. The mirror shards from the night before lay scattered around him, each one reflecting a different face. Faces he'd seen, faces he'd taken, faces that whispered his name. He stood slowly, trembling. Every bone in his body ached. But his hand, his right hand, still clutched the only thing he'd ever feared, the toymaker's key. The key that could lock the soul away, or set it free. And now he was the last soul left to make that choice. When he reached the field, the world was silent. The doll sat in the snow, her body perfectly intact despite the ruin around her. In her hands rested the red velvet case, half open, the candle inside still burning. A flame without smoke, a heart without warmth. He knelt before her. "It's over," he said softly. "You've won." Her eyes opened. There was no color in them anymore, only light, shifting and endless, as if she had swallowed the sky. Her voice, when it came, was not one voice but many. There was never winning, only remembering. He shook his head. "You were a child once, a soul. You weren't meant for this." "Neither were you," she whispered. The ground trembled. Beneath the snow, faces began to emerge. Porcelain, flesh, ash, and bone. Hundreds of them. All the ones he'd tried to collect, every confession he'd ever sealed. Their mouths opened in unison, whispering the same word, "Forgive." But forgiveness had long since rotted. Then she changed. The doll stood, her porcelain shell beginning to fracture. Thin lines spidering across her cheeks, her arms, her chest. Each crack released a whisper, a confession, a memory. From her lips came Claire's voice. From her eyes came Lily's tears. From her hands came Eleanor's laughter. Every soul she had taken was inside her, and now they wanted out. Vale dropped the case. The candle inside flared, its blue flame twisting upward into the shape of a small, trembling girl. "Eleanor." "Please," she said softly. "Make it stop." Her porcelain body convulsed, each fracture glowing with unbearable light. The ground split beneath her feet, and a single sound filled the air, the sound of porcelain cracking, magnified until it became thunder. Vale staggered back. "If I use the key," he shouted over the noise, "you'll be gone forever." Eleanor smiled through the fractures. "That's what forever means." He stepped forward, pressed the key into the doll's chest, and turned it. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound was not a click but a scream. The world folded inward, the air tearing open like fabric. Light poured out of her, blinding, burning, beautiful. When it faded, the field was empty. No dolls, No whispers, no flame. Only Dorian Vale remained, on his knees, snow falling quietly around him. In his trembling hands he held what was left of her. A small shard of porcelain, faintly warm to the touch. He closed his eyes, whispering a prayer he didn't believe in. Far away, in another town, one untouched by curse or memory, a little girl opened a box she'd found in an attic. Inside was a single porcelain fragment. It shimmered faintly in the light. "Pretty," she said, holding it to her ear. From deep inside the fragment came a whisper, faint as breath. "Do you want to tell me a secret?" The girl smiled, and the shard glowed. Episode 20. The whisper that never dies. They say sound fades, that no matter how loud a scream or how soft a prayer, the air eventually swallows it, leaving nothing but silence. But some whispers are different. Some stay. They cling to walls, to skin, to memory. Too heavy to disappear, too alive to die. And in the small, nameless town where no one remembers the name Hollow Creek anymore, one of those whispers had begun to stir again. The house was old, but not haunted, not yet. It belonged to a couple who never believed in ghosts, who had moved from city to city chasing quiet. They found it here, in a little yellow home that leaned against a field where nothing ever grew. They said it was peaceful, the kind of place where nothing bad could ever happen, until their daughter found the box. Her name was Marcy, 7 years old, with a gap-toothed smile and a curiosity too big for the world. She'd been playing in the attic when she found it. A small wooden chest, no lock, no name, covered in dust. Inside was a single shard of porcelain. Smooth, pale, warm. It hummed when she touched it. At first, she thought it was music, a faint, distant tune, like someone humming through the walls. But when she pressed it to her ear, the melody changed into words. "Hello, Marcy." She froze. "Who are you?" The voice was soft, kind, familiar in the way lullabies are familiar even when you've never heard them before. "I'm your friend. Tell me a secret, and I'll keep it safe." Marcy giggled. "Mommy says secrets are bad. Not when they're whispered." She smiled, leaning closer. "Okay. Sometimes I wish Mommy would stop yelling." The shard pulsed faintly in her hand. "I can help with that." That night, the whisper came again. Not from the attic, from the walls. Marcy's mother woke to the sound of her own voice calling her name. Except she wasn't speaking. When she entered Marcy's room, the girl was asleep, the porcelain shard glowing faintly under her pillow. The air smelled like rain, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Marcy!" The girl stirred, smiling in her sleep. "She says thank you." "Who?" Marcy rolled over, whispering the name like a prayer. "Eleanor." In the morning, the parents didn't remember the storm. They didn't remember hearing the voices, or the way their daughter had smiled without opening her eyes. They only remembered the quiet, and how peaceful it felt. So peaceful that neither of them noticed the new doll sitting on the windowsill, its porcelain skin smooth, its eyes closed, its hands folded neatly in its lap. When the wind brushed through the curtains, the doll tilted ever so slightly, as if listening. And in that brief moment, a faint crack appeared across its lips. Then came the whisper, soft, eternal, patient. "Every secret needs a home." Far beneath the earth where Hollow Creek once stood, something shifted, a heartbeat echoing through time itself. The snow fell upward again, defying gravity. The voices of every soul that had ever confessed rose into the air like dust, swirling toward the stars. And in that endless, aching quiet, one voice remained. A woman's, warm, steady, unforgiving. "I kept my promise." Somewhere a little girl laughed. A whisper answered, and the world turned as if nothing had happened, while the doll, freshly born from silence, waited for the next secret to keep forever.
Epilogue: the silence after the whisper. There are stories that end with a scream, and stories that end with a prayer. But the worst ones, the truest ones, end with silence. The kind that follows after something sacred has broken. The kind that doesn't echo, because it doesn't need to. Years passed. The house where Marcy's family once lived stood empty, its windows blind with dust, its rooms filled with the scent of forgotten winters. The field behind it never grew anything again, just pale earth, flat and frozen, as if afraid to wake what slept beneath. Travelers sometimes passed through. They said they heard children laughing in the wind, or a woman singing an old lullaby from somewhere deep below the soil. But when they stopped to listen, the sound always stopped first. And in the silence that followed, something listened back. In the archives of the new town, a historian once found a photograph. A little girl standing in front of a toy shop long ago, holding a porcelain doll with eyes too human. On the back of the photo, written in faded ink, were just 3 words. She kept them. No one ever found out who she was. Some said it was Eleanor. Some whispered it was Claire. Others believed it was all of them, woven together, bound by the same secret. The desperate wish to keep love from dying, no matter the cost. And maybe that's why, even now, every so often, a child somewhere in the world wakes in the middle of the night, clutching a doll that wasn't there before. The eyes always look handmade. The smile, just a little too perfect. And if you listen closely, you can hear it breathing. Soft, steady, waiting. Because some promises do not fade with time. They wait, beneath the snow, beneath the earth, beneath the bones of memory. For someone to whisper again, "I'll keep your secret." And the world, foolish and hopeful, will believe it